All right. Well, good afternoon once again, everyone. My name is Layla Shahidel. I am the project director for Wake Tech's Finish First and See initiative. Finish First and See is a high impact, high volume, low resource, and low cost solution for student success and completion. And we are delighted to bring you another partner support webinar today. The purpose of the partner support webinars is to provide technical support and helpful information as you're implementing the Finish First and See tool and processes. And today's webinar will be highlighting Finish First Partner College, Gaston College, to hear how they're using the Finish First and See program. And then after that, we'll have a brief question and answer segment to answer any questions that you might have about using the Finish First and See tool. And I do want to encourage you to ask any question that you might have without hesitation. It could be that someone else has your same question as well. Now that second part, the office hours question and answer segment, is optional. So if you'd like to only remain for the first part, you're welcome to do that and then excuse yourself at the end of the first segment. And we will have a space at the end for questions. But if at any point you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat box and we'll get to them as soon as we're able to. Before we dive in, I do want to share just a few announcement and housekeeping items with you. Now, after your college's spring 2022 grades are finalized, we want to encourage you to run your Finish First and See tool to capture students who were active in the spring 2022 semester to see if they have any unclaimed completed credentials. Now, when you do that, be sure to update your transcript and formal report to include grades for the spring 2022 term. And also update your graduation file, your graduates file to include students who've completed programs by the end of the spring or through the spring term. And also be sure to pull your student information file and your Pell recipient file for the spring 2022 students so you can have the full benefit of merging your contact information and getting the summary at the end of that Finish First and See run. And when you're prompted, you'll exclude 2 semesters, and that'll be the summer 2022 term and the fall 2022 term, assuming your classes and registration for the fall has started. The new completion output file will show you the students who fulfilled requirements to complete credentials, but have not been awarded them. I also want to thank you to all of you who sent in your semester data to our team for the fall 2021 term. Now, if you've not yet had a chance to submit your data to us by the April deadline, we would still love to get that from you. So please share that, please submit that to Jennifer Nicholson. And if you can't locate the email that contains the data collection form, or if you have any questions about that, please let us know. Now, after this webinar is over, I will share a brief survey to gather your feedback on the webinar. So please be sure to complete that when you receive it. And we are recording this first part of the webinar. So as long as we have no technical difficulties, I'll share the link of the recording with you as well. And finally, I do want to ask everyone that you please mute your microphones so we can have everyone get the full benefit of the webinar, unless you are speaking, in which case we do encourage your input. And with that, we're going to go ahead and dive into our topic. Let me stop sharing my screen. So again, we're delighted to hear from Gaston College, which is in Dallas, North Carolina, and Gaston adopted Finish First and See in the fall 2020 semester. We're joined by Elisa Roy, who is Director of Records and Registration at Gaston College. And again, there will be a space at the end for questions, but if you have any in between, in the meantime, be sure to put those in the chat box and we'll get to those as soon as possible. So Elisa, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you, Layla, and thank everyone for participating today. We really appreciate it. So our current process right now is that students pay a $45 graduation fee for diplomas and degrees. There's not a charge for certificates, and those certificates are handled in our dean's office with no charge. So in 2013, we began an auto award process for certificates. Previously, students applied directly through the dean's office, and most of them weren't even aware that while they were working on their diploma or associate degree, they were racking up certificates along the way.
And are you, I'm not seeing your screen.
Oh, I shared it, so let me see. I clicked share content. Can you see? How about now?
Yes.
Okay, so you seeing a slide?
Yes, it's
Okay.
visible now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So my assistant director is really great with Informer, and he came up with a process to capture certificate completers in parent programs. So if I was in the AAS and accounting program, then we could post the certificates that they had completed along the way. Before we started that process in 2013, we did about 50 certificates a semester, and afterward, our certificate completions ranged between 170 and 400 per semester. So that was a good progress, we thought. And when we decided to implement Finish First, we decided to focus on certificates because there's not a charge. And that process really seriously increased our completers. In fact, this past academic year, we had 1,011 certificates in spring of 2021 and 1,408 in fall of 2021. And I will say that some recent changes to the Finish First software have made our lives a lot easier to get out the high school students, the CCP students that were not allowed to post those adult certificates for. That really helped quite a bit. So we've been contacting students that have completed degrees and diplomas, but what we're finding is they're not very interested in that. A lot of them have just flat out told us they can't afford to apply for it. So what we decided to do was to propose a change from a $45 graduation application fee to a semester-based student success fee. And that will allow us to automatically award degree and diploma completers without them having to apply and pay. Just this past fall, there were 88 credentials we would have been able to post. So what we've done is we've made that proposal. It did pass our finance and facilities committee on Monday. So we're presenting to the board Monday, and if they approve, this will take effect in the fall. And that we feel that that would help us fully be able to utilize the Finish First software. What we found is that we do have to review the near completers because the process seems to be looking for the most current course version. And sometimes we've reached out to students and they had an older course version. So what we're doing is planning to ramp up that outreach. Our QEP was for advising. And so going over the graduation process is part of that. So that short and sweet is our Finish First implementation at this point. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, thank you for sharing that, Elisa. And if folks have any questions, please definitely put those in the chat box. I see you have a question, Amy. Who is primarily responsible for reviewing the data and contacting the students? That's a good question.
It's the records office. What we did originally with our near completers was let the advisors do it. And I didn't look at that first. And then a lot of students would come back and say, but I already took such and such class. So what I do is I edit that output before I send it out. So we're hopeful that we can turn over the near completers to our advisors so that they can reach out and make sure they take those last few classes as needed.
Awesome. So right now, what does y'all's process tend to look like after you run the Finish First NC tool? So is it the registration office that actually runs the tool, or is that with IE or IR, or what does that look like?
I run the tool. I'm responsible for it. It's my baby. So what happens is after I get the completers, I turn it over to my team of processing specialists, who then it usually takes us about a week to get all the certificates posted, and they'll also post the degrees. Fingers crossed that the board approves our proposal for the student success fee starting in the fall.
Yeah, that's great. And then what would you say, Elisa? Well, actually, before I ask that, could you share what your process looked like? I know it's been a while. Gaston's been working with Finish First NC since 2020. Do you remember, can you share what that looked like, especially for colleges who are a little bit newer or who have newer stakeholders? What it looked like for y'all to go from having this tool that, maybe I'm sure you had a lot of questions in terms of what your process was going to look like at Gaston, to actually developing what you have now?
Sure. Our original process was a little bit bulky. You had to run several informer reports. So like if a certificate had 4 classes, you would run it to see who was in the current program, who had finished the first class, then run it again for the second, third, etc., until you were done. So the finished first lets us take out all those intermediary steps and go ahead. So what we did was we did a test run with Layla and Kai and their crew, and then just ran it the first time to see what we would get, and we were just surprised at how big the output was. There's an executive council group on campus made up of campus leadership, so we sort of just told them this is what we're doing. We joined this with this group, and this is the benefits that we see. So I was able to report back the first couple semesters how many certificates we were awarding. Like I said, working with our director of advising and testing on the near completers is the next step that we hope to take, in addition to automatically posting degrees and diplomas.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you said that. We know from feedback from a lot of the colleges that that's pretty typical in terms of what colleges do, right? You'll focus in on what is the lowest hanging fruit, or seeing what you can go ahead and take advantage of now, those completions. And then once you have that down, which it sounds like y'all do, from there you kind of expand and see how you can work with the new completion list and maybe involve more stakeholders.
Right. I don't think anyone on campus will be unhappy to post more completers.
So who are some of the stakeholders that y'all do have involved right now? Of course, the registration office. Who are some of the other key players on your campus?
Our director of advising and testing, and then the deans. We work with the deans on all things graduation related. We usually just send them the list because they're the ones that will send those certificates out. We'll handle the diplomas should our proposal be approved next week. So mainly it's just keeping like my vice president, the vice presidents, and the deans involved. Because a lot of them will say, well, when are you going to run it? Because students are asking us about it. And so we wait until we post all of our people that applied to graduate, and then I go run the Finish First software.
Awesome. So I'm going to keep these questions coming. If others have questions, definitely put those in the chat box. One thing that I do want to ask you about, Elisa, you talked about how when you sent out communications to the students about degrees and diplomas, you found that they were not very interested, maybe because of, in many cases, the financial barrier. What does some of the communication look like in terms of what y'all share with the students? And then is there any other feedback that you've gotten from students, the certificate holders who would not have that financial barrier?
Some of the certificate holders are surprised. They're like, are you sure this is right? I wasn't even in this program. And so we explain how the certificates are niched in under the associate's degrees. But generally, I just created an email template. So I would email somebody, hi, dear Johnny, our records indicate that you completed an associate in arts in the spring semester. You haven't yet applied for that credential. And then I just outline the process for them to log in to self-service and make that application. And I would get a lot of questions because sometimes it'll pick up a program that they're not actually currently in. So we would talk about how to declare that major and pay the fee and whatnot. A lot of times, like I said, the student was like, I'm just not ready for that. I don't even, I'm not sure I want to do multiple programs. I'm not sure I can afford to pay 2 graduation fees. And so we plan to continue to utilize the outreach to say, in addition, this time, hi, you've completed the requirements and we've already processed it for you. Your diploma will be mailed to you. Please check your transcript.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm sure some of our other folks have questions for you as well. If you're thinking of any question, please definitely put that in the chat box or use the raise your hand feature and you can come off your microphone and ask Lisa your question. Another thing I'm really curious about as far as Gaston, what are some of the lessons learned that you would say y'all have picked up along the way? Or maybe another way to ask that or consider that is, if you had the chance to go back, knowing now what you do, if you could go back to fall 2020 and restart this at Gaston, what are some things that maybe you would do differently?
I would have talked to the deans first about which programs to include or exclude. For example, we have a level 2 welding certificate that the dean taught us that they are planning to revamp. They don't want us to post any of those certificates. They want them to have a different process. Maybe we'll include it again. I didn't realize when we first started that we could exclude programs. So we excluded like general occupational technology and AGE because everybody and their brother was getting an AGE. So maybe we'll have to discuss that and get back if my fee proposal gets changed. But that's what I wish I knew before we started, was that we could limit the number of certificates or degrees or diploma programs. It wasn't until the year 2 when I picked up on that. I was like, hi, I think we'd like to take some of these out if we could. And you guys are extraordinarily helpful, saying, yes, absolutely, we can make that happen.
Yeah, awesome. That is definitely something that we I guess we started doing that maybe a year and a half ago. Kai, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But getting a sense from y'all, from others in other colleges, that there are programs that Finish First will pick up. It'll pick up on everything, you know. And so if you don't want any program awarded, or you know you're never going to process, you're never going to post those programs, we want to help y'all get those out of the way so you don't have to go through the time and you know, do the validation and make sure that they're truly going to be able to be awarded, only to not award those. So yeah, that's definitely something that we've changed along the way too. Absolutely. And one other thing I'm curious, and if you're not able to answer this question now for any reason, you don't have to, but with your QEP being about advising, how do you foresee the near completion list helping out in that way? Or is there anything that you're considering regarding that?
So one of the features of the QEP is that all new students have to meet with their advisor, and all new students have to have a mid-semester advising appointment during their first semester. And farther down the process, they have a required graduation check-in where the advisors are explaining the process. So what we're hoping is the QEP is already hopefully getting people on track. We started in June, so it's still a new process for the advising, but to help keep them on track so that they can take those classes and complete faster instead of meandering around self-advising and hoping for the best. So we're hopeful that the piece that we can turn over to the advising team is the near completion, so that they can reach out and say, okay, you know, you're within 20% of this degree. These are the classes that you need to take so that you can do that if that's what one of your goals is.
Yeah, that's awesome. So one other question that I have before I relinquish all of my many questions to the ether, just so people can kind of get a sense of your college, can you share what a typical semester enrollment is for y'all for curriculum?
Sure, it's somewhere between 4,500 and 5,000 students in a fall or spring semester.
Awesome. Well, I would love if anyone has any questions, please come off your microphone or use the raise your hand feature or put it in the chat box. But Elisa, thank you so much again for sharing your experience with Finish First, your lessons learned, things that you would do over, and your successes with it as well. I'm sure this is going to be enlightening and helpful to all of us joining this and those watching the replay as well. So are there any other questions at the moment for Elisa for Gaston College?
If not, I have a question for you guys. Who's processing the Finish First files at your colleges? Is it mostly in the records office? Is it in advising?
Yeah, that's a great question. So why don't y'all put in the chat box, or if you want to speak, you can do that as well. So Rebecca from Wayne says records is doing that. Yeah, what are some of the other colleges doing? Records office at Guilford Tech. Records and admissions. Graduation office. Excellent. Yeah, so you can keep those responses coming if you want to. Was there anything else that you wanted to share? Any other thoughts that you have, Elisa?
No, and just like I told you earlier in the week, I'm just super excited and grateful that you guys worked out a way to exclude the CCP students. That was hugely time consuming, so it made the process a lot easier, and we're really grateful to be part of the project.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I'll just share, kind of piggybacking off of that. One thing to keep in mind is when you're thinking about excluding your CCP students, be sure that you get a list of your current CCP students at the beginning of the semester or at some point during the semester, so that you don't have to go after the semester is ended and their statuses could be different than it was for the semester. So make sure to capture your list of CCP students within the semester that you need those students evaluated, so you can remove them as you would need to. Well, Elisa, thank you so much again. And if you have questions for Elisa, she will stick around for the question and answer segment. So she'll be here if there are any questions that you want to ask or that you think of after the end of this segment. But thank you again, Elisa, for sharing this with us.
Quite welcome.